Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for being here. Now, today I'm going to do the mid-year book Freakout tag, but before I get into that, I just want to talk about the elephant in the room, which is you can probably hear some construction in the background. That's because there's two construction sites within, distance of my house, and they're very annoying. But anyway, today I'm going to do the mid-year book Freakout tag. I did it last year. It was one of the first kind of videos that I kind of wanted to do aside from my bookcase tour. And yeah, I think it would be really interesting to kind of compare where I'm at as opposed to last year and go through each question. I'm not going to tag anyone to do this. I don't know anyone to tag to do this. No one tagged me to do this, but I'm doing it anyway. So let's get started. Question 1, best book you've read so far in 2017. Now, I have a couple of books on hand, but I would say the best book that I've probably read is the one that I'm actually reading at the moment, and that is The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. This is essentially, you could say it's a self-help book, but it has a lot of legitimate research that goes into it. Brené Brown is a shame and vulnerability researcher. She's researched shame, she's researched courage, she's researched wholeheartedness and empathy, and she's been doing this for a decade and a half. She has a really amazing TED Talk online, one of the most viewed ones ever, and the way that she speaks, the way that she presents her research, isn't in an academic sense, but in a very in a way that makes sense. For me, it's almost like reading about a lot of my spiritual beliefs, but having them kind of legitimized through scholarly research. The reason that I'm enjoying this so much at the moment, as you can see, is it's helping me a lot with perfectionism and needing everything to be right all the time before doing anything, and kind of embracing that vulnerable space of just doing it anyway for the sake of doing it, and if you fall down or if you fail, you at least tried. So yeah. Question 2, the best sequel I've read so far in 2017. Now, this would have to be the Black Edition. It's volumes 5 and 6 of Death Note, and I'm really enjoying Death Note. It's the first time I've ever really ventured into kind of graphic novels, and I'm really hooked on it, and I have the other 3 remaining books that have the rest of the volumes in them. But I'm really loving it. The reason I love it so much is I watched Death Note years ago when I was about 15, so about 8 years ago. No, probably when I was 17, so about 6 years ago. And I really enjoyed it. And then once I found out that it was an actual series last year, I was like, I need to read it. And I find it better than the anime series that I watched. Question 3, new release that you're most interested to read that you haven't read yet. Now, there were a couple of new releases that I mentioned at the beginning of the year that I was really excited about, but I haven't actually... As time's gone on, I've kind of lost interest in them, especially, for example, Caitlyn Jenner's memoir. I've lost all interest in reading that. I have no care about it. But one that I'm still haven't read, but I really want to, is High Gorgeous by Candace Cain. I have a photo of it there. And Candace Cain is a trans woman. A lot of people know her from Caitlyn Jenner's TV show I Am Kate, but she's also, a performer, a dancer, a choreographer, and I've always really liked Candace Cain for a couple of years now. I was first introduced to her on RuPaul's Drag Race, and yeah, I think it would be really interesting to hear her experiences and hear her kind of outline what her life has been like. Question 4, the most anticipated release for the second half of the year that you're most looking forward to. I actually don't have any. It's just that simple. I have none. There's nothing that I'm really eager for. There's nothing I'm really interested in. I'm sure something will pop up, but for the most part, I have other stuff to read and I'm more interested in reading that. Question 5, the biggest disappointment so far. Hands down, without a doubt, 13 Reasons Why. I thought it was awful, to be honest. I enjoyed the Netflix series somewhat. I was actually on a podcast discussing my opinions on the Netflix series, so I'll actually link that in the description box below. But I watched this series first and then read this, and I found the book so kind of bland and watered down. I found the series a lot more intense than the book. It was like the book was this watered down version of it. And reading it, I just didn't find it believable, relatable, and it was so much more teenage angsty. And I found it, to be honest, I found it quite ridiculous. And the fact that it's such a hyped up, well loved book kind of makes me scratch my head a little because I thought it was really, really poorly written and just shit, to be honest. Yeah. Question 6, the biggest surprise so far. I would have to say the biggest surprise so far was reading The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. I know it's not a book that came out this year, but I found it really interesting. I found it really gripping, especially for, the first time, engaging with that author. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well written, and it really surprised me because I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. Question 7, favourite new author. Now, this can be someone who is a debut author or someone that you've only just encountered yourself, and this is definitely the case for me. And it's another book that I'm reading at the moment. I'm actually reading like 4 books at the moment. I'm listening to 1 audiobook because I have a lot of free time and I'm loving it. But yeah, this author is Patrick Rothfuss with The Name of the Wind. I've owned this since about 2013 when it was recommended to me by someone when I used to work in a bookstore. But because I knew that this book and the next book were out and the third book wasn't out, I was like, oh, I can just wait, and I kept delaying it and delaying it. And the third book still isn't out, but I kind of just wanted to get it done. My biggest concern with reading it is obviously it's very thick, as fantasy tends to be, which tends to put me off fantasy a lot. I really like reading fantasy, but the thickness of the books, the intense detail of the stories can be a bit overwhelming at times when you just want something that's kind of bite-sized. But that's one of my goals for the rest of the year, is to read more fantasy. I want to finish this. I want to get into Game of Thrones because I haven't read that yet, and I haven't watched it because I won't watch it until I read it. But yeah, so I'm actually really, really enjoying this. I only started it a couple of days ago, but I'm getting through it slowly, but I'm loving it all the same. Question number 8, newest fictional crush. Again, I'm pulling the book up again. Now, I can't say this with a well-rounded opinion yet, because I'm only 150 or so pages into it, but I really love Kavoth. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not really sure. But from what I've read so far in the story, and I'm just like, I empathize and sympathize so much with him, and I'm really excited to see his character development because apparently there have been other things that have happened. But yeah, he would be my most recent literary crush. Question number 9, the newest favourite fictional character. So it's technically not new, but again, a lot of the books that I'm reading this year, or that I've read so far, are books where I'm familiar with the characters to some extent. There's not really anything new that I'm reading aside from, The Name of the Wind, but I don't want to keep rehashing that. But one of my favourite new characters would have to be Elle from Death Note. I think he is absolutely adorable. I think he's intelligent, he's smart, I really like him. The thing I love about Death Note so much is the kind of intricate detail with the kind of thought processes behind everything that goes into it. So yeah, he would probably be my favourite new character. Question 10, a new book that made you cry. Now, technically this isn't a book, but it's an audiobook on Audible. And it's, again, by Brené Brown, who wrote The Gifts of Imperfection. And this is more of a program that she ran, but I actually really enjoyed it. It went for about 7 hours on Audible. Just pulling it up now. The Power of Vulnerability, Teachings of Authenticity, Connections and Courage. Again, it's this idea of, really embracing who you are as a person, and it's really transformational and things like that, where you are actually doing kind of a lot of soul searching, and it's not necessarily fiction, but you're doing this soul searching and you're really reflecting on who you are as an individual. It can be quite confronting and emotional at times, so that would probably be the one that's made me cry. Question 11, a book that made you happy. Now this would have to be Funniest Stories by Paul Jennings. Now I read this as a kid back in year 5, year 6, so when I was about 10, and I really enjoyed the stories then. So to be able to go through and reread them, so in there's 25 kind of short stories written for children, but they're really hilarious and they're very tongue-in-cheek, and there's a lot of innuendos, and it's such Aussie humour as well. And it's really interesting to be able to read this, 13 years after I first read it, and be able to still giggle and laugh at the same things that I would have back then, if not more now, because I have more of a wider perspective as an adult. Question 12, favourite book to film adaptation. Now, admittedly, I saw The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. I read it and then I watched it and I thought the movie was awful. I don't think 13 Reasons Why counts because I watched the series first before reading the book. So naturally that would probably be my favourite because I thought the book was awful. But I think I'm going to go with an announcement instead, which is, when Jodi Picoult's latest novel, Small Great Things, was announced that it was becoming a movie and they're getting Julia Roberts and they're getting Viola Davis, and I kind of flipped my mind over it. I'm really excited for that. I really enjoyed the book when I read it last year. So to be able to see it become a movie, I'm so excited. I think so many of her books should be movies, and I don't know why they're not. The only one they made into a movie really was My Sister's Keeper, and they completely ruined it. So, yeah, I'm excited to see that one when that comes out next year. Or whenever it comes out. I don't know when it comes out. Next question. Favourite review you've done this year? Or if you're a YouTuber, or if you're a booktuber, favourite video you've done this year? Now, I would have to say either... So I have them here. And it would either be, I would say it would be, not that you can really see, Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult. I really loved reviewing the book because, she's a friend of mine, so to be able to actually talk openly about her work in such an admirable way, about a book that's just genuinely good, I really like doing that. Or, alternatively, I really enjoyed making my writer's vision board video, which is there. I enjoyed it because it was one of the first videos I made getting back into Booktube after my hiatus, one of my hiatuses. But I really enjoyed making that because it felt like, yes, I'm finally getting back into it. Only little did I know that I would kind of go MIA again. But I really love that video. I feel like it shows a different side of me and a side of Booktube that not many people would kind of show. Question 14, the most beautiful book that you've seen or received this year, or you've bought this year. I have 2 of them, and well, actually 3 of them, and I'm going to grab one now. Okay, so the first one I only got this recently, a couple of weeks ago, and it's In the Shadow of Man by Dr. Jane Goodall. Now, the reason I like this so much is because I've liked Jane Goodall for a long time, but I was actually able to meet her and get it autographed, and that was such a huge moment for me. So naturally it's going to be one of the most beautiful ones because it has a lot of kind of meaning behind it, or it has a lot of emotion attached to it. But the second most beautiful book that I've received this year, or that I've bought this year, it's technically 2, but it's the same book, and it's the Ravenclaw editions of Harry Potter. Yes, I bought both of them. I had to stop myself from buying all 8 of them, but I had to buy at least these 2. Now, I like these because of the spines, because of the colours, but also really interestingly, for those who haven't got any of the house editions or the 20th anniversary of Philosopher's Stone, which I'm really hoping that they release them for the whole series, because I will happily buy them. But the reason I like it so much is because at the start, in the contents, it has a lot of information about the houses, or at least your house. So, Ravenclaw and what it means to be a Ravenclaw. So, yeah, I think they're gorgeous. I think they're stunning. Question 15, the final question. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? I don't need to read any books by the end of the year, but there's a lot of books that I want to read. There's a couple books that I have right next to me. Rising Strong and Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. I really want to get into Sarah J. Maas, and I also really want to get into Sarah J Maas, especially A Court of Thorns and Roses in that series, as well as her other series, I think Throne of Glass. I really want to get into that as well. I've been meaning to for a while. I want to get into Gemina by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, especially because Obsidio is coming out next year, which I'm really excited about. What else do I want to do? I want to finish all the Death Note books that I have. There's a couple of spiritual books that I want to read. I want to reread the Harry Potter series. I want to reread the Twilight series. I want to reread the Hunger Games series. I want to reread a lot. And I feel like that's one of my problems, where I want to reread stories, so I'm not reading anything new, but I also want to read everything new, so I'm kind of balancing everything. And the other book that I want to finish by the end of the year as well is I think it's A Wise Man's Fear, also by Patrick Rothfuss, the second book in that trilogy. So yeah, I really want to finish that too. Alright, I'm going to wrap it up there. This construction is driving me insane. But yeah, that's my mid-year book freakout tag, whatever it's called. So, like I said, I'm not tagging anyone, but if you want to do it, if you want to reply to me and just in the comments and let me know your answers to the questions, feel free to do so. Other than that, feel free to like and subscribe. And I will see you next week. Bye!